Hello and welcome back. So fantasy playoffs are here for some of you, and I did a mega video covering this week's schedule and waiver ads and some other hot streaks that we paid attention to in the video yesterday, but there were still some guys who were on fire and didn't make the cut for yesterday's video. So let's do what we always do on a Monday and look at some of those guys here. Top performers from last week, under 50% ownership, you know the deal. 3 forwards, 2D, 1 goalie, and the bonus section at the end, a double bonus this week where we'll look at both the player and Goalie Hub Risers. So stay tuned for that at the end. But let's start with a player who cost me my week in fantasy because of a massive 4-point game last night. And no, it's not Clayton Keller, but it is his younger, mustacheless teammate in Barrett Hayton. 12% owned, single position center, so that's not going to bode well for his ownership necessarily because you like that positional flexibility. But on the week, 8 points in 4 games, 3 power play points, 13 shots. A lot of that had to do with this 4-point game last night against Minnesota where they picked up the win in overtime. 4-game point streak to go with all of this production. Obviously, if you're scoring that many points, you're probably getting a point every game, which he did. A nice little split between goals and assists, 3 goals, 5 assists, a couple power play points, and the shot volume is decent as well. On the season, he hasn't been the most productive, and he's definitely not the most consistent. Younger players typically are not consistent, so you can't rely on them week in, week out. But when they're hot, they are very hot, and you can ride that hot streak as long as it can possibly last. Now, this is another thing to factor in. 3 of these 4 games were at home. So Arizona seems to be a much better team at home than on the road. I've been saying that for a while, and that's where a lot of this production came. He only had the 1 assist against Colorado away, but at home, racking up the stats, racking up the points. The shot volume is pretty decent, 2 shots per game. He's getting the power play exposure. Right now, he's top line center with Keller and Ritchie, but Schmaltz is out. I think it's a short-term injury. We'll have to double-check on that. But when Schmaltz is in, he's on that top line with Keller and with Barrett Hayton. So that is nice line assignment exposure for Barrett Hayton. On the year, not a lot in terms of hits or blocks. The production's been relatively low, under half a point per game. Goal production, 63rd percentile, so nothing crazy there. 33 points in 67 games isn't bad for a young player who's finally starting to break out. This necessarily wouldn't classify as a breakout season, but he is trending in the right direction after quite a while waiting for this player. He's a 5th overall pick, so now he's starting to figure it out. And it's not just this past week. Over the past 12 games, he's got 13 points, 6 goals, 7 assists, 3 power play points, and 3 of those power play points, all 3 of those power play points came in the last 4 games, which you can see down here in the game log. So he's been productive over the last month or so, and he's cranked it up over the last week or so. So if you're in a deeper league and you need a center and you're looking for some exposure on, this is another one of those themes, good players getting top line assignments on weaker teams. This is a nice file, and if you can find Arizona in a week where they have a bunch of home games, that actually bumps his value a little bit in my opinion. So if you need all of those things, then go out and grab Barrett Hayton. But if not, our next player is maybe the hottest player in the league right now, dare I say, and that is Jason Zucker. 38% owned. I tried to get him in yesterday's video, but they only have a 3-game week this week. But nonetheless, an incredible goal-scoring pace. 5 goals in his last 4 games, 18 shots, 12 hits, 4.5 shots per game, and 3 hits per game over the past week, which is incredible. And then on top of that, if you look at the last 11 games, 10 goals in his last 11 games. Only 3 games of those 10 did he not score a goal. So incredibly consistent. And that's what you see out of his log. Every single game he's getting a goal. He's getting a bunch of shot volume and hits. He's either hitting or shooting. So if the shots aren't there for one game, he's hitting in that game. If the hits aren't there, he's shooting and scoring in that game. He's been very productive. He's riding shotgun with Evgeny Malkin on the second line, and they filter in different wingers on that line. Last game, it was Alex Nylander with the call-up, but it just, he's got the chemistry with Evgeny Malkin, and that seems to be working for him right now. Now, in that 11-game stretch that I just mentioned, he was averaging 3.1 shots per game and 2.1 hits per game. So this is not new. And if you look at his hub here, 93rd percentile in hits, which is excellent for a forward, 84th percentile in shots, and he's actually out-shooting his season-long average over the past month or so. And then on top of that, 91st percentile in goal production. So he's similar to what Tanner Jeannot used to be, similar to what you would look to get out of Tom Wilson, a hitter who shoots and gets goals, but he also covers a little bit of other stuff as well. 73rd percentile on the power play, 67th in assists. The assists are a little bit low, and he had none to speak of this past week, but he's going to get assists if he's throwing the puck on net like that. If somebody can chip in a rebound for him, that would help him out with the assist coverage. But for those of you out there who are trying to replace Kaprizov, that is an impossible task, but this is probably the closest you'll get because you're getting 93rd percentile hits. So if you're in a bangers league and you're trying to replace Kaprizov didn't hit. So you're going to increase your hits totals and try to cover that category or boost your point totals with that. And then you will get the goal production similar to what Kaprizov had, albeit not that similar, because obviously Kaprizov is 99th percentile in goals. And 99th basically across the board for offensive categories, but this is pretty much as close as you can get on the waiver wire, 38% owned. But he's only a single position left winger, so that does hurt his positional flexibility. Either way, with a player this productive right now, this hot lately, you kind of ignore that and just put him on your roster and work around that. So excellent week for Zucker, excellent last couple of games going back all the way into February, like late slightly before the All-Star break, and then right after that he was starting to heat up. So it's been a little while now, and he's one of those guys that I've rode at different points during the season. When he hits these hot streaks, he starts to cool off at some point, so let's hope that doesn't happen this week if you picked him up. But this is still a really great file over the last month plus for Jason Zucker. Up next, a guy I mentioned in the weekly video yesterday, Alex Killorn. He is dual eligible, 36% owned on the week, 5 points in 4 games, 2 power play points, and 15 shots, 3.75 shots per game. That's a nice bump from his usual average of around 1.6 shots per game. So he's been getting consistent top 6 minutes. Stamkos was rumored to be out, but he was back last night, so that doesn't necessarily affect his line assignment, but it could depending on if Stamkos is in or out. Right now he is with Hagel and Cirelli on the second line, but they're not really going to bump him to the third line because they have what they need there, bringing in Tanner Jeannot at the trade deadline. On the season, 51 points in 67 games is pretty nice. That's 0.75 points per game. You're also looking at 8 power play points, a shorthanded goal, and 4 game winners, and then he's a plus 15 as well. So if you have plus minus, he's not going to hurt you there. A 3-point game here against Philly, blanked against Vegas, an assist against Chicago, and then a goal against Winnipeg, but the shot volume pretty consistent there, and he does get a couple hits every now and then. You're mainly getting him for goals, assists, and power play production. He is on PP1 right now, I believe. That might change just depending on how John Cooper likes to roll out his lines, but every now and then they throw him on that power play, and that increases his value as well, which I mentioned yesterday in the weekly video. Post All-Star break, 17 points in 19 games, 5 power play points, and that shorthanded goal. So he is much more productive lately than he was at the beginning of the season, so that is something that you have to factor in. And again, this is the theme with the last 2 players, guys that are hot this week, but it's not just this week. It's been going on for a little bit longer now. So these are reliable streaming options for this week and going forward. And Tampa does have a 4-game week this week. So this is a guy, a lot of the guys in the Data Draft Discord group have been asking about whether they should pick up Killorn or Zucker. Depends on what you need. But if you have the choice between the two, either of them are good options. Killorn gives you a little bit more flexibility with the dual position eligibility, but Zucker is a little bit hotter when it comes to goal scoring. So it depends on your league format. If it's a points league that weights goals significantly heavier, I'd lean Zucker. If it's a points league that favors a little bit more power play production, I would lean Killorn, because that's the one thing about Zucker. Over that 11-game stretch I was just talking about, 0 assists and only 1 power play point. So you're getting a little bit more power play production out of Killorn than Zucker. So that's kind of the tiebreaker there, but it really just depends on what you need in your point format or category settings. But nonetheless, an excellent week for Alex Killorn. And that brings us to the defenseman. This is a guy I didn't think I'd be talking about on this channel, having a couple of those lately. Nate Schmidt, 1% owned. On the week, 2 goals, 2 assists, 8 shots, 6 blocks. Nothing crazy there outside of the goal production. 4-game point streak, 2 goals, 2 assists is nice. But the main reason for this is Josh Morrissey went down with injury. So you can see here, I don't know if you can see it, but he was playing around 15 minutes before Morrissey went down. Now he's up to 20 minutes with Morrissey down. It still has him, Daily Faceoff has him as a third pair defenseman, but he is on power play too, so that may help his production a little bit. I wouldn't necessarily go out and pick this player up just because this is a one-off performance. He's not doing much of anything this season. 0.25 points per game is really low. Shots aren't there. Goals, assists, nothing there. Just a sprinkling of power play points. Not a lot of hits for a guy that you would hope would be a hits and blocks D. Is getting some shot blocks, but other than that, really not ownable. But you do have to shout out a nice week where he gets 4 points in 4 games, 2 goals, 2 assists. So yeah, nice little week for Nate Schmidt, and they're going to need him if Morrissey's missing any significant amount of time. They're trying to make a push in the Central, so they're going to need all the help they can get. And for whatever reason, Hellebuck has been bleeding some goals lately, so they got to tighten it up a little bit defensively, and that's where Nate Schmidt is usually supposed to come in. So a nice offensive week, but let's hope that Morrissey's back for all of you guys that own him, and that Nate Schmidt can go back to playing reliable third pair minutes. And that brings us to the guy that you should run out and grab, and that is Rasmus Sandin. Obviously, he's one of the guys at the trade deadline that has taken a massive jump in production and ownership. He was 36% owned 5 days ago when I featured him as a fantasy file, now up to 51%. On week 21 last week, 3 games, 5 points, a goal, 4 assists, and a power play point. A lot of that coming in the first 2 games here. 3 assists in this game, a goal and an assist there, but a 3-assist game the other night against the Islanders as well. The key here, look at this time on ice, 21 minutes, 25 minutes, almost half the game, literally almost half the game against New Jersey, back down to 23-27 against the Islanders. If he's playing that much, you have to have him in your lineup. There's no substitute for ice time. If he's going to be out there, just, pucks are going to bounce off of him for shot blocks. If he's touching the puck at all during his shifts, then they're going to be racking up secondary assists, things like that. And that's what you can see here. 1 goal, 7 assists, 8 points, 2 power play points, and 8 hits in the 4 games since the trade. So this is a really nice file, and it goes a little bit further back than that. Post All-Star break, 12 points in 9 games. So all signs are pointing up, and go grab Rasmus Sandin right now because he will not be 51% owned for very long. The only thing that I wonder about is John Carlson may be coming back in the near future. They've been giving kind of eerie timelines about it, 2 to 3 weeks, but he's been skating in the morning skates with a non-contact jersey. He's been participating in practices. If John Carlson comes back, that may affect Sandin's power play time. But this week, that might not happen. John Carlson might not be back this week. So if you need a defenseman this week to try to get you through your playoff matchup, Sandin is the best available option if he's even there on your waiver wire at 51% owned. But an incredible post-All-Star break and post-trade performance from Rasmus Sandin. And that brings us to the goaltender, Casey DeSmith, 15% owned. On the week, 2 wins, .60 goals against, .979 save percentage, and that was 1 game in relief. This game against Columbus, Jari got lit up, and then he comes in, doesn't let up a goal, gets the win, comes back the next game that he plays against Philly. A really nice performance there with a .969 save percentage. On the year, he's 500, 13, 13, and 4, 314 goals against, .908 save percentage is pretty decent though. That's above league average at the very least. I updated the goalie hubs Saturday before that last game that he played, so it says .906 on his save percentage on the goalie hub, but nonetheless, pretty decent goals saved above expected. The start volume isn't crazy, but he did fill in when Jari was out for quite a while, so that is why that's bumped a little bit. The win percentile, 50th percentile. You'd like to see a little bit more wins out of Pittsburgh in general, let alone just Casey DeSmith, but they're in a playoff push right now. They need to, I believe they're in the first wild card spot. They need to maintain that. They've got a couple of important matchups this week against the Rangers, so that will be a potential opportunity for DeSmith to get in and show what he can do. But I do believe they have a 3-game week, and I don't think there's any back-to-backs, so you might not have him in your lineup this week if he doesn't get one of those games. Just kind of, trying to figure out, they don't want to necessarily play Jari against the Rangers 3 times. Maybe they play DeSmith. and just see how that happens with the line assignments and the starting goalies on Daily Faceoff or wherever you get that information. But he had an incredible week nonetheless. There was a couple of other guys that were close, but with that level of a goals against average and that save percentage, I figured DeSmith was worthy, and so he gets the nod for the goaltender of the week. And since the All-Star break, here's the breakdown of the two goaltenders. DeSmith 6-3, 2.62 goals against, 9.24 save percentage. Jari 4-2-1, 3.65 goals against, and an 8.77 save percentage. So that is concerning for me, who I own Tristan Jari. I currently am running 4 goaltenders, and I don't want to do that, so I'm debating dropping Jari, but I really don't want to do that. Jari did have a good game last night, but this is something to keep an eye on. If he's going to continuously outplay Tristan Jari, maybe he starts to steal some starts from him, and that could mean good production for your fantasy team if you pick him up. But that'll do it for the regular portion of the show. Let's get to the bonus section and the player and goalie hub risers. So you're looking at the goalie hub right now, and on the right here, this is a little graph to show you how much players have changed from week to week. And right off the top, Vitek Vanacek struggling of late, not playing his best hockey, although he did get a shutout yesterday, which is not factored in to this data as I updated this Saturday morning. So that will bump him back up a little bit. Nothing to be too concerned about, but if you do own Vanacek, you might want to handcuff him to Akira Schmidt down here, who doesn't have a ton of change because he wasn't in the NHL prior to this week. But after being called up with Blackwood being injured, these two goaltenders play on a team that's extremely good defensively. So I wouldn't expect this slump to continue for that much longer for Vanacek. But if you are worried, definitely go out and pick up Schmidt, because the Devils are a very good defensive team, and Schmidt is probably there on your wire. Now, a couple of good stories. Fleury is bouncing back. He's found his game lately. Sergei Bobrovsky has found his game recently, but they do have a 2-game week this week, so that's not the week to go pick him up if he's there for you. And Jacob Markstrom, I wondered about featuring him as well. He had 3 wins in 4 starts, I believe, this week. But if you do look at his game log, he's still got like 3 or 4 games mixed in there. He's got some good games. He's had that shutout. That was a 40-plus save shutout. He had a really nice game last game, but then every now and then he throws that game in there with an 840 save percentage or an 870 save percentage, and that could potentially destroy you if you're in a categories league and you need to, cumulatively get that save percentage over the course of the week. That could hurt you. So I don't know what to think of Markstrom, but it is a nice little bonus if you've been holding on for this entire time, waiting for him to bounce back, that he's finally starting to play some good hockey. Then you also have Ranta. When he's been healthy, he's been a pretty good goaltender. Obviously, he's on IR right now. So that's why I was saying pick up Kochetkov, who is this high in the goalie rankings because of his team exposure and his skill level. So he's been one of those guys. I picked him up in one of my leagues. A lot of the better managers out there are looking at this guy whenever he gets that call up, and they're grabbing him right away. My number one competitor, Toe Dragons, woke up at 6 a.m. last time to try to grab Kochetkov off the wire. So that's a guy that's definitely should be on your radar if you're in need of goaltending. Here's Jari fading a little bit, Matt Murray a little bit as well, but that is in a much smaller sample size as he's just come back from injury. Nothing too concerning here for, where did it go? Freddie Anderson. He's been playing a little bit better, but just a matter of health for him. And then you look down at the bottom here, Sogard, that's a very small sample size. I wouldn't necessarily read too much into that. But if they are experiencing injuries in Ottawa's goal crease, I would just monitor who they've got in the net. There's been a couple of times points in the season where they've run with some guys that you wouldn't even have heard of previously. And they've done some pretty good things because of, I don't know if it's the defensive exposure. Like I did mention a couple weeks ago, Ottawa was playing much better defensively, so that was helping them out. And then this is a good sign. Thatcher Demko starting to progress in the right direction. 6.1 change interval over the last couple of games, so he's finally starting to put his game together. And there's some other files here. Grubauer improving. John Gibson, he's a, he is what he is. He's getting shelled every night, and he's a pretty good goaltender, albeit getting shelled every night. But that's going to do it for the goaltenders. Let's turn it over to the forwards and D. Now, another file that we didn't get a chance to go over is Owen Tippett. He's averaging upwards of 25 minutes time on ice for John Tortorella and the Flyers. With Konechny out with a bunch of injuries to their top guys, he's been getting a ton of ice time, a ton of situational time where he's playing in the last minute. He's playing when they're trying to catch up and they're down a couple goals. He's getting power play opportunities, etc. His shot volume is really nice, 90th percentile, 2.8 shots per game, and the goal coverage is pretty decent as well. The points will need to come up to be a little bit more relevant, and the assists are where that could happen, but nonetheless a pretty decent file for Owen Tippett. But the way we look at the change interval on the hub, you go to change right here, and you sort from top to bottom. And then what I'll do is now we have these filters on the player hub. So I will filter by point per game. I don't really want anybody on my team who's that low in terms of point production. So let's say around 60%, or I'm sorry, 0.6 points per game. And that will filter out a lot of these players that are, 20s and 30s, so that you get just the guys who are pretty much relevant in fantasy. So Lucas Reichel is one of those players in, on a bad team getting an opportunity in the top 6. There's nobody left for Chicago. So he's been getting an opportunity and he's been taking advantage of it. Teravainen getting exposure on the power play 2 unit that just now features Shane Gostisbehere, so that might have bumped his production as well. I mentioned Andre Palat in yesterday's video. He's been playing really well, and the Devils have utilized him on the 3rd line, but they've balanced out their 3 lines. So now they have 3 scoring lines that can produce, and he's been one of the guys driving that line, along with Jesper Bratt and Erik Haula. Obviously, Clayton Keller's on the cover of this video. He's been playing extremely good hockey. He's basically a point per game guy over the course of the season. Shea Theodore's been getting it done lately. Riley Smith, Dawson Mercer, Phil Deneau having an excellent week as well. Jamie Benn is really complete, 77 on the hub. One of the most complete players you'll find on here that you may or may not be able to own. It depends. He was dropped in one of my leagues. I did pick him up, but that is probably rare for a lot of you out there. Nick Schmaltz, another guy who's around a point per game, good player, bad team. He's day-to-day right now, but if he comes back, he's always a good streaming option, center, right wing, dual eligible. You have Killorn here, who we mentioned in today's video. Jaden Schwartz. This is another file from the Seattle Kraken. I never know who to pick up because there's so many guys that could get it done on any given night. And lately it's been Jared McCann that is the #1 ad from Seattle Kraken. He's playing with Beniers and Eberle on the top line. Schwartz, I think, factors in on the 2nd line, but he's seemingly found his game and is starting to produce some offense. Anthony Duclair would maybe be a nice low-risk option if you're looking to potentially replace some of the things that Kaprizov was doing. The shot volume, 95th percentile for Duclair, and usually he's a goal scorer. So if those shots start to go in, that's where you'll start to make up some of those things that Kaprizov lost. But again, I do like Zucker a little bit more right now because he is on fire for that purpose. But you do have a bunch of other guys down here who are, increasing, but not by that much. So we'll just cover these top guys and then call it a day. But that's going to do it for this video. If you liked it, leave a like down below. If you have any comments or questions, I'll try to be attentive throughout the course of the playoffs and answer as much as I can. And I wish you all the best of luck in your playoff matchups if you are in the playoffs, and I will see you in the next video.